The widow, with her 4 young children, thought the abandoned train was empty until she heard the scream that changed everything. Sarah Mitchell's hands were still trembling as she pulled back the rusted door of the freight car, the metal groaning against years of neglect, when her 6-year-old son Tommy stumbled backward and collided with her legs, his small body rigid with terror. The November wind cut through the abandoned railway yard like broken glass, carrying with it the smell of diesel and decay. Sarah had brought her children here out of desperation. 3 days sleeping in her Toyota had left them all hollow-eyed and shivering, and the foreclosed house they'd been evicted from felt like a lifetime ago. Her youngest, 3-year-old Emma, whimpered against her shoulder, tiny fingers clutching the worn fabric of Sarah's coat. The twins, Michael and Madison, stood close together, their matching blue eyes reflecting the gray afternoon light. "Mama, I don't like it here," Tommy whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind whistling through the skeletal remains of the train yard. "I know, baby. Just for tonight. I promise." But Sarah knew her promises had started to sound hollow. She'd been making promises she couldn't keep since David died 6 months ago, the heart attack that took him at 34, leaving her with 4 children under 8, a mountain of medical debt, and no life insurance because they'd let the policy lapse to pay for groceries. The freight car seemed solid enough. Old, yes, but shelter. The door stood partially open, and through the gap, Sarah could see darkness and the faint outline of wooden crates. She'd checked 3 other cars already, one flooded with rainwater, another filled with what looked like hazardous chemical containers, a third home to a family of raccoons that had sent the twins screaming. "Stay close to Mama," Sarah instructed, her voice firmer than she felt. The interior of the freight car smelled of rust and old wood. Shafts of light penetrated through gaps in the walls, creating strange patterns on the floor. Sarah's eyes adjusted slowly to the dimness. The space was larger than she'd expected, maybe 20 feet deep, with wooden pallets stacked against one wall and what looked like old canvas tarps in the corner. "Can we make a fort, Mama?" Madison asked, her voice small and hopeful in a way that broke Sarah's heart. "Maybe, sweetheart. Let Mama check first." Sarah set Emma down gently, the little girl immediately reaching for Tommy's hand. She moved deeper into the car, her shoes crunching on debris, shattered glass, bits of wood, the detritus of abandonment. The canvas tarps looked relatively clean, and beneath them, she found several moving blankets, the thick quilted kind. Her heart lifted slightly. This could work, just for tonight, just until she could figure out their next move. The scream came without warning. It was high-pitched, desperate, and distinctly human, a sound of pure terror that seemed to come from the very walls of the freight car itself. Sarah's blood turned to ice. The children froze, Emma's face crumpling as she prepared to cry. "Everyone out! Now!" Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. She grabbed Emma, practically threw her toward the door, her hands shoving the twins forward. Tommy was already moving, his survival instinct sharp. They tumbled out of the freight car into the weak November sunlight, Sarah's heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Get behind the car! Stay together!" The children huddled behind an overturned railway cart, their faces white with fear. Sarah stood between them and the freight car, her body tense, ready to run or fight or do whatever it took to protect them. Her breath came in short gasps, creating small clouds in the cold air. The scream came again, louder this time, more desperate. But something was wrong. The sound was off, mechanical almost, with a strange rhythmic quality. Sarah's mind raced. A person in distress wouldn't sound like that. The scream held for too long, repeated at exact intervals. "Mama?" Tommy's voice was small behind her. "Shh, baby." Sarah waited, counting seconds between the screams. 15 seconds. Exactly 15 seconds each time. Her fear began to transform into something else, confusion, then slowly, cautiously, understanding. She moved back toward the freight car, slower this time, every sense alert. The screaming continued, that same horrible sound that had sent them fleeing. But now, listening carefully, she could hear the mechanical undertone, the slight distortion that no human voice would have. Inside the freight car, she found it almost immediately. A motion-activated alarm, the kind construction sites use, tucked behind one of the wooden crates. Its speaker cone pointed toward the entrance, its sensor eye blinking red in the darkness. The device was old, its plastic housing cracked, but it still worked well enough to terrify a desperate mother and her children. Sarah's legs nearly gave out. She braced herself against the wall, her whole body shaking now, not from fear but from the adrenaline crash. Someone had placed this here deliberately, to scare away people exactly like her, people looking for shelter in abandoned places. "Is it safe, Mama?" Tommy stood in the doorway, his small face anxious but brave. Sarah looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw David in his eyes, saw the way he stood, ready to protect his siblings even though he was barely 6 years old, saw the childhood being stolen from him day by day. "Yeah, baby, it's safe." Sarah pulled the alarm's batteries, silencing it forever. The quiet that followed felt almost sacred. She gathered her children back into the freight car, arranged the moving blankets into a nest of sorts, and pulled them all close. Emma fell asleep almost immediately, her thumb in her mouth. The twins curled together like puppies. Tommy stayed awake longer, his body gradually relaxing against hers. "Mama?" he whispered eventually. "Are we going to be okay?" Sarah looked around the freight car, at the walls that kept out the wind, at the blankets that would keep them warm, at her 4 children safe and together. She thought about the alarm she'd just disabled, about the fear it was meant to instill, about how close they'd come to running back out into the cold. "Yes," she said, and this time, she meant it. "We're survivors, Tommy, all of us, and survivors figure things out." As darkness fell over the railway yard, Sarah made a decision. Tomorrow, she would walk into town and find the church her mother had mentioned once. She would swallow her pride and ask for help. She would fight for her children the way they deserved. But tonight, they would rest. The freight car that had tried to scare them away became their sanctuary. And the scream that had nearly broken her had somehow shown Sarah something she'd been forgetting, that she was still capable of protecting her children, still capable of fighting, still capable of hope. Outside, the November wind continued to blow through the abandoned railway yard, but inside the freight car, 5 hearts beat steadily through the night, together and unbroken.